there's a song I haven't heard in years and years and years, but really, I've heard it probably once or twice in my life, and I really don't know why I remember this song. But it's Give Me That Old Time Religion. I don't know if any of y'all remember that song or not, but it's, from way back. And it says, Give Me That Old Time Religion. And one part of it said, it's good enough for Grandpa and it's good enough for me. Well, actually, I don't know if the hymn writer knew that, but probably in Grandpa's day, the old time religion wasn't the old time. It was probably, the old time religion was probably pretty new in Grandpa's day. And so that's just an illustration of how fast Christianity changes. It's never remained the same. Its beliefs, its practices have constantly changed. And that includes all versions of Christianity. Christianity has been a very fluid thing, always in a state of flux and change. I think today we see faster changes, and I put that down to the pace of communication. We can go instantly throughout the internet, throughout the world with the internet. You can go instantly with text messages. We travel all over the world, and everything is so fast today because communication is instant. And changes are happening not only in Christianity, but in society and everything at a blinding rate. Now I see two main factors behind most of the changes we're seeing in Christianity today. And I think it's good to look at those. Some of these things we've talked about before in other contexts. But I think it's important to talk about them in this context. And I think that's important because we really need to understand what's happening within organized, institutional, denominational Christianity. We need to understand how that operates. And we also need to get an idea of what we can expect from it in the future. Now, all this has to do with morality, in the sense of what's right and wrong. Hopefully, as Christians, our morality, our sense of right and wrong, comes from Christianity. And so, these things have to do with the very basic ideas of what we think is right or wrong. If you had to sit down and write out, if somebody said, write out 25 things that you think are definitely right, 25 things that you think are definitely wrong. I've thought about that. It would be hard to do that. I mean, if you may have an idea in your mind, you have to actually put something on paper in words and express it. You think about that, how hard that would be. So anyway, I hope that we get our morality from Christianity. And these two factors I want to talk about today, one of them is about less than 200 years old. The other one is about 1,700 years old. We'll talk about the most recent one first. And we talked in here before about how science, when it came on the scene and really captured the public imagination in the 1800s, it presented a tremendous challenge to Christianity. And we've talked about how the way Christianity met that challenge was to just decide that the Bible is myth. The things in the Bible like creation, Noah's Ark, parting the Red Sea, the virgin birth of Jesus, the miracles of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, and even the very existence of Jesus as a human being, the way the New Testament presents him, began to be looked at as myths. And the reason people started doing that was so they could accept both what the Bible says and also be scientifically minded. And so in the 20th century, organized Christianity solved the conflict between science and the Bible by just saying that the Bible is myth. So, it wasn't only science, though, that came on the scene and challenged Christianity in the 1800s. Something else did, too. The main thing that happened in the 1800s in this country was the Civil War and the movement to abolish slavery. And of course, the main justification for abolishing slavery was the claim that slavery is immoral. But that presented a problem for Christianity. Slavery is not only accepted in the Bible, even by Jesus, but more than one time the Bible flatly states, slaves, be subject to your masters. And so you had over here society increasingly saying slavery is wrong, but you have the Bible accepting it and saying slaves be subject to your masters, and it really does say that. It might make us uncomfortable, but let's not deny it says it. So what were Christians to do? What could you do? First they tried to say that slavery didn't mean slaves. They didn't get by with that long because it does mean slave. It's a Greek word. It's not a mysterious thing. It's a Greek word. It means slave. So that didn't work. Then something else happened. The idea of women's rights came on the scene beginning in the late 1800s. And just like slavery, this also was presented as a moral issue. And just like slavery, Christians were in a quandary because there are passages in the Bible that relegate women to secondary roles. It literally says that. Again, that might make us uncomfortable, but it is in fact in there. So by the early 1900s, Christianity was in an uncomfortable position. Christianity was on the other side as far as science was concerned. It was on the other side as far as women's rights were concerned. It was on the other side as far as slavery was concerned. What could people do? Most people just didn't pay any attention. They were just the ones. But there were Christians in places like New York City, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia. They were wealthy, well-educated, leaders of society, and they wanted to be seen as sophisticated, intelligent, worldly people. They viewed themselves not only as part of the upper crust of America, but they wanted to be viewed as part of the upper crust for the entire world. They did not want to be seen as backwater Greeks. They wanted to be seen as worldly, intelligent, sophisticated people. People that were members of First Presbyterian Church in New York City, or Madison Avenue Baptist Church. These people wanted to be on the cutting edge of everything, but they also wanted to be Christians, and they didn't know how to do that. A man named Charles Darwin saved them. About 60 years previously, Darwin had published a book with his theory of the origin of life on Earth, and he said that life as we know it today was not created by God in the form we know it, that it developed from single-cell, simple organisms over eons and eons of time to be to the point where life is advanced today. Human beings, Darwin said, were not created by God in one moment. They evolved from single-cell organisms all the way up through fish, and fish that came up on the land, and then monkeys and whatever. And so these upper echelon Christians realized they could use Darwin's ideas to resolve the conflicts they were dealing with between science and the Bible and society. They applied Darwin's ideas about the evolution of life to the development of society. And they came up with the idea that society developed over the ages, specifically in terms of morality, right and wrong. When they looked at the societies of the past, they saw barbaric, primitive societies that did not have a developed view of morality. Just as Darwin said human life evolved over the ages, so they said that the concept of morality evolved over the ages. Not that it evolved so much as that it just took that so many ages and ages for society to develop to the point where people could realize what truly was right and truly was wrong. And they had just finally begun to do that in the 20s and 30s. In other words, the people in New York and Boston and Chicago and Philadelphia in the 1920s and 30s were the first people in the history of the world the whole history of the world, that have ever been able to discover true morality. It has taken all of human history for that to happen. The people in the past didn't have the right concepts of right and wrong, but it wasn't their fault. They weren't developed enough. They looked at Jesus as representing a quantum leap forward in the understanding of morality, but Jesus was too far ahead of his time. He appeared way too early in societal development, and the people he talked to were unable to understand what he said. They didn't have the capacity to understand it. But these were the only people left on to pass on to us what he said. When they wrote the New Testament, they framed it in this primitive and barbaric concepts that they had, so that the true teachings of Jesus were obscured and buried. The idea was that most of the Bible can be dismissed as ramblings from a primitive, barbaric time. Things like slavery and the position of women in society. If you go to seminary today, that's what you'll be taught. It's exactly what they'll teach you. And so they applied this to morality, and they said you cannot go to the Bible to find out true morality, because all the Bible can give you is an animalistic morality from a primitive, barbaric age. Society wasn't developed enough for people to recognize it. And today that is accepted in virtually all mainline denominations. These people don't think they're changing concepts of right and wrong. They feel like that we've just discovered what true right and wrong are. That's why they feel such a need to apologize for Christianity in the past. You know, people today are always wanting to apologize for something. And that's the reason. They're the first to actually understand what truth really is, and so they need to apologize. We need to apologize for our predecessors. Those who came before us lived in a more primitive and barbaric time, and we apologize that they were so stupid. But you've got to understand they were not developed enough. You can't look to the Bible for morality, you look to society, because the evolution of society will tell you what true, right, and wrong is. So that's the first factor between the changes we're seeing today. The idea that morality has just now been uncovered. That we have just now, in all of human history, been able to understand what really is true and what really is wrong. Now the second factor is much older than the first. It's been around for 1,700 years. It is the idea of Christianity as chaplain to society. Now a chaplain is a religious representative attached to a secular organization. An example would be a minister that works at the hospital or hospital. The sheriff's department has ministers. The military has ministers in there that work, that are ministers attached to a secular organization. That is a chaplain. Now, why would a secular organization want chaplains? Well, the obvious answer is that sometimes people that find themselves in the hospital or in hospice have spiritual needs, and the chaplain is there to help them meet those spiritual needs. And that's true. I guess they do that. But having a chaplain, though, does something else. It gives a very important impression. It gives the impression of divine sanction to that organization. Having a chaplain attached to an organization makes it seem like that God is present and active in that organization in a special way. That's not the stated purpose of the chaplain, but that's the effect of it. Take the hospital, for example. Chaplains at the hospital have the effect of giving divine sanction to the hospital. It has the effect of making it look like God is active here in a special way. That may not be the impression they intend to give. I'm not saying that's why they have them. I'm just saying that's the impression it does give. It gives divine sanction to the organization that has them. Now, from the beginning of organized Christianity has functioned as the chaplain to society because that's the reason it was created. It was created to serve as the chaplain to the Roman Empire. You see, Roman Emperor Constantine created what we call organized Christianity, the church in quotes, in order to unify the Roman Empire. And he gathered together these officials and told them to create this institutional structure of a religion. And it became an arm of the Roman government. And so here was a secular organization, the Roman government, that had a religious attachment to it, organized Christianity, and that's the definition of a chaplain. So that's what it was created to do. In other words, the Roman Catholic Church and all the things that came out of it was created to be the chaplain of the Roman Empire. And of course, the people who organized it knew that. They knew why they were created, and they knew that their jobs and their positions and their wealth and their influence depended upon them doing that. And so that's what they did. They made the beliefs and customs of the church mirror the beliefs and customs of Roman society, because that's what their job was, to give divine sanction to Roman society. And that's what they have done in every society they found themselves in since. Since the role of a chaplain is to give divine sanction to the society or organization, to make it look like this society is especially connected to God, to make it look like God agrees with the beliefs of this society, organized Christianity has always adjusted its beliefs and its interpretation of the Bible to go along with whatever was current in society. Now, we've talked about that before, and I can't emphasize that enough, though, because you cannot understand organized Christianity unless you understand they have always adjusted their beliefs to keep their beliefs in line with society. You see, the presence of a large organized religion in a society that has beliefs that conform to what is current in society has the effect of giving divine sanction to that society. In this country, we've seen that over and over again. When slavery was accepted in this country, organized Christianity, for the most part, was perfectly comfortable with those passages in the Bible that support slavery. But when society said no, slavery's wrong, Christianity had to adjust, and it did. When women were assigned secondary roles in this society, organized Christianity was, for the most part, comfortable with the passages in the New Testament and the Old Testament that assigned women secondary roles. But when society decided women should no longer have secondary roles, organized Christianity had to adjust, and it did. Back when the society was perfectly content to say that God created the world in 7 days and everything was created just like it is now, organized Christianity was perfectly willing and perfectly happy to go with the first couple of chapters of Genesis. But when science came along and said that's not what happened, Christianity had to adjust, and it did. It's done that over and over and over and over. And we've seen it do that in our day recently. Within the past 15 or 20 years, we've seen it make many major adjustments to keep itself lined up with what we are told society has done. And it's not only in the United States that this happens. It's all over the world. In the current war between the West and Russia, where Ukraine is the point man, the Orthodox Church in Ukraine sides with the West. The Orthodox Church in Russia sides with Russia. Chaplain to society. You see, organized Christianity has never seen its role as being to stand outside of society pointing to a different way. It may have claimed it was doing that, and it may have said it was doing that, but when you look at what it did, It has always stood firmly inside society and operated to give divine sanction to whatever was current at any particular moment, because that's what it was brought into existence to do. There was a very graphic example of that during the coronavirus in the Shelby paper. There was a big picture on the front page of a group of ministers all dressed up in whatever kind of religious outfits they wear, getting the coronavirus vaccine. And the story said these ministers were publicly getting the vaccine in an effort to overcome the hesitancy some people felt about getting it. So seeing this group of ministers getting the vaccine was supposed to make people receptive to getting it. Now, it doesn't matter how you felt about the vaccine. I'm not talking for or against it. It don't matter whether you thought people should have been forced to take it or whether you refused to take it. The fact is that this textbook example, Christianity is chaplain to society. It was Christianity promoting what was current in society at the moment. It was ministers promoting what society wanted people to do at that particular moment. And that's Christianity as chaplain to society. And you know, society has gotten used to us operating that way, to the point where it expects us to go along with society. And if we don't, society gets upset. Society regards those parts of organized Christianity that follow society as true Christianity, and the parts of Christianity that refuse to follow as false. A good example of that, and I'm not coming down one way or the other on the gay issue. I'm just saying that there are proposals out there that would advocate labeling Christian groups which do not accept homosexuals as hate groups and saying they are not really a religion and they should be removed from the category of religious group. It doesn't matter what you think about homosexuals. It doesn't matter if you're a homosexual, I don't care if you are or not. It don't matter if you accept it or not. The fact is that is a textbook example of Christianity as chaplain to society. If your beliefs don't mirror ours, you're not really a religion. That's what they're saying. That's the role society expects us to play. And that's the role most of organized Christianity plays. Now we can go back and talk about what we talked about at first. Remember when we talked about the idea that true, right, and wrong is not to be found from the New Testament, but is instead to be found in society. True morality will be found through the development of society. Then we talked about how organized Christianity has operated as chaplain to society. See how those two come together? If you accept that true morality is found through the development of society, then you don't think there's anything wrong with changing your beliefs to stay in line with society. In fact, you think that's what you should do because what society has come up with is true morality. Actually, what happened in the first part of the 20th century, when this idea developed that true morality is found through the development of society, was a justification for the role organized Christianity has played for 1,700 years as chaplain of society. If truth is to be found in society, then if Christianity wants to reflect truth, it must reflect society. I want to read you something here in the reading from 1 Peter. You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Rejected indeed by men, but chosen by God. You as living stones are being built up a spiritual house. Does that sound like chapel to society? Or does that sound like we should stand outside, pointing to a different way? Does that sound like we should be like leaves on the water going wherever the current flows? Or does that sound like we should be anchored in and standing for something, no matter which way the wind blows? Do we really believe that true morality is uncovered through the development of society? Or do we really believe that true morality is uncovered as Jesus takes the veil off of our eyes and allows us to see truth? Do we really believe that Christian churches should reflect whatever is current in society? Or do we really believe that Christian churches should be anchored in, immovable, a solid rock? It's a lot to think about. And it has tremendous implications for the future.